Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Cheryl Chapman, who is owner of the Gretna Eye and Aesthetics practice in Gretna, Nebraska, and also a co-founder and chief medical officer at Peeq Pro, which we'll get to learn a little bit more about today. Dr. Chapman, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. I'm looking forward to getting into things. So, tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be. You've been an independent practice owner now for several years, right? Like
Yeah,
almost
I
two
graduated
decades.
optometry school in 2003 and I bought my current practice in 2006. So
Okay.
we're getting close to that 20-year mark.
Oh,
Pretty
awesome.
exciting.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. Tell us a little bit about that because, we have listeners that are kind of like in all stages of the journey. It's just a little bit of background about kind of what led you into acquiring a practice so quickly back then, 3 years out of optometry school.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those circumstances where you're just happening to be in the right place at the right time, I would say. So I graduated optometry school in 2003 and I moved back to my home state of Nebraska to get closer to family. And it was really good advice was given to me at that time. They said, live where you want to live and you will find the practice opportunities. Things will come to you. And that was good advice because at the time that I moved back, there really weren't any full-time gigs available. So I was picking up like a little bit here and a little bit there. I really wanted to be in private practice, but I had to blend a part-time or a full-time schedule was made up by a lot of like part-time gigs, right? So we had some retail stuff and a part-time private practice here and a part-time private practice there. And I'm a firm believer in being very involved in your optometric community. And so I had joined our state association, went to a new member reception that very first fall. So I'd been out just a couple months, had been licensed that summer, and it was September, October time. And I met then a doctor in the Omaha, Nebraska area. And, just great guy, nice little conversation, but then moved on and kept networking with other people. It was about 2 weeks later, I had received a call from him and he said, hey, my associate doctor left. I have this satellite clinic. Would you be interested? And I was very interested. It allowed me to cut a day out of one of those retail practices and get one more day in private practice, which was my ultimate goal. And working for him ended up being a very fortunate experience because he essentially became my mentor on how to run a practice really smoothly, efficiently, successfully. And so I got to really watch what he did. And then several years later, he said, hey, I don't really want to have the satellite clinic anymore. And I want to give you like first right of refusal. Would you like to buy it? And so I was 3 years out of school and this opportunity just fell in my lap. It was a very young practice. The practice had actually been started about a month before 9/11 happened. And so it was a struggling practice in the beginning. I remember there were days where we would have like 5 patients was like a super busy day. We'd get so excited. And I remember the first month we broke $20,000 in receipts, and it was just like, it was a young practice, to put it mildly. So I was still working some other part-time stuff while I was building up my practice, but very quickly was able to build it to a point where I was able to cut all that other stuff out, focus on my own practice. Fortunately, it's a growing area. And so new patients always moving into the area gave us a lot of opportunities.
Okay, very, very nice. So well, you mentioned, a big belief in being very involved in your optometric community. And is that what led you? I mean, we were chatting just briefly, we don't spend too much time on it, but at least when I mention it, that you've been serving as the president of the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control for the past couple of years. And so is that like, where do you feel like that strong like passion to volunteer in these different areas and associations and such? Where does that come from? Is that something that's been deep rooted into you or just something you're passionate about now that you're in the field?
Well, I think when you are involved in a profession, it's really good to be involved in it at more than just like your own business because you kind of have to give back a little bit too, right? Like a lot of what we're able to do in optometry really comes from a lot of the legislative efforts that were driven by some of the optometrists that preceded us. And so I feel like it's important to be involved in that, give back. It doesn't take a ton of time, but it also feeds you too. Like you make connections through there and you feel like you're more of a part of a community, which I think is really important. We're always talking about like, how do you avoid burnout as a physician? And I think feeling like you're not on an island is very important, feeling like you're part of a community. So yeah, getting involved in those state associations, which for me ended up being a really fantastic thing because for a while I served on the board of directors for my state association. And the experience I had there prepared me quite well to be able to help lead the American Academy of Orthokeratology and myopia control through a rather turbulent time. I was there right when the pandemic was starting. That was kind of when my vice presidency started and then like rolled into presidency. At that time, our executive director left. And so my experience at the Nebraska Optometric Association was very important and vital at that point in time because my state association had always used an association management company. So when our executive director left, I immediately thought, well, this is something we need to get an association management company on board. So I was able to find one that was a very good fit for us. And that's been a game changer for the AAOMC. It has helped us really solidify our organization with better processes and procedures to turn it into like more of a business than kind of a mom and pop association, which is how it started. But myopia management has grown so much, it needs to be more than that now. And so that was just very lucky that I had kind of that background and the opportunity to kind of step in and share my expertise with that organization.
Awesome. Okay. So then you're in this like progression, private practice, giving back. Let's talk about your kind of your newest, I think it's your newest venture. It's not entirely new, but it's the youngest one of all of them, I think, which is Peeq Pro. So tell us a little bit about that. I haven't heard of that before I was researching you for this call, but tell us a little bit about it and kind of how you started that.
It is the newest, and I'm going to start, Eric, with an extremely important question. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Did you brush your teeth today?
Well, of course. Yeah.
Of course you did.
Every day.
Did you wash your eyelids today?
Well, I mean, if you count running a washcloth over them in the shower, then yes, but I'm having a feeling you're going to tell me that's not going to quite cut it.
I'm going to tell you that's not going to quite cut it. If you just put warm water in your mouth, switched it around and spit it out, would you count that as brushing your teeth? Of course not.
Well, no.
Right. So like your teeth would still feel icky, right? So myself and another doctor in the Nebraska area are very passionate about helping to elevate eyelid hygiene within our population. We have developed a patent pending eyelid cleansing device. Think of it like the toothbrush for the eyelids. It has a sponge, it has a patented vibration speed, it helps loosen dirt, debris, and bacteria along the eyelid margin and pull it away. And that's really important because the prevalence of dry eye has grown from 3 million sufferers to over 40 million sufferers in the United States in the last 20 years. And you might say, okay, well, what's happened within the last 20 years? What has happened that has changed human behavior? I bet you either have it sitting on your desk in front of you or in your pocket, and you're staring into it right now. Screens. Smartphones, computers have become ubiquitous, and everybody's using them all day long for work, and then they're using them for leisure in the evenings. Interestingly, when we're looking at screens, we blink 70% less than normal. So not blinking enough is causing these morphological changes on the surface of people's eyes. It's decreasing their oil gland secretions. It's making their oil glands die. The eyes are getting very dry. That gives other things a chance to move in, like bacteria along the eyelids. I have a picture behind me of some really nasty eyelids. That is a patient's eyelid who has mites on her lash margin. Those are extremely common. I see eyelid mites all day, every day. Probably 5 or 6 patients a day I'm having to talk about their eyelid mites. We're seeing these big problems. Dry eye is not just a nuisance. It causes corneal scarring. It causes vision loss. It causes pain and suffering. It causes people to not be able to enjoy their favorite activities. It affects quality of life. So we know very clearly that if we can start eyelid hygiene at a young age, reducing the bacteria, improving the oil gland secretions, reducing inflammation, we're going to help ward off dry eye in the same way that brushing your teeth every day helps prevent gum disease and problems with the mouth. So it's all about teaching patients about eyelid hygiene in the same way dentists taught about dental hygiene decades ago.
Okay, got it. So yeah, this is fascinating. I mean, I've never even considered like a more, increased or intense regimen for cleaning the eyelids. But hearing you talk about it, I mean, it it's kind of like a no-brainer and makes total sense. I can tell you just as a personal anecdote here that my wife, when she watches like not when she watches movies or TV, but she's doing like she's playing a game or something, she will literally blink 100% less than what she does normally because she just like stops blinking. And then
Yeah.
you look at her while and it's like she's got, this tear running down her eye and her eyes all red. It's like, hey, take a break. And it doesn't happen very often, but when she gets involved with something, yeah. So and I mean, I of course notice it too on myself. I can't not blink, but but it's probably less. And I definitely feel like the impacts of it. Like I'm ordering some of this right after this call because definitely going to try it out. So you offer this I mean, you offer this as a retail version, but also other doctors can order it and you do some wholesale buying or selling so that they can include it in their
Absolutely.
office.
Absolutely. So we're here to help support optometrists and help get the right products into their patients' hands, but we're also here to help promote compliance. So if a doctor signs up with us, like the first thing we do is we get boxes in their office that have the preferred products by that doctor. So a foaming eyelid cleanser, maybe some hypochlorous acid, whatever drops that doctor wants. If they like sustain drops or refresh drops or uptaste drops. So we have access to all of this. The nice thing for doctors is they don't have to worry about buying like cases of this stuff and worrying about expiration dates and worrying about, well, what if I decide I want to switch to a different drop? So that's kind of nice. The buy-in is really low for doctors. But then what also happens is we have a little QR code specific to that office. And when the patients scan that QR code, they get put into a workflow. And so then we have this automated workflow that like talks the patient through what they're doing, like welcome to the dry eye club or whatever. We have ways to make sure that they're actually doing it because again, remember, we're trying to change human behavior and changing human behavior is very, very hard. So we train the patients over time to do what we call habit stacking, which is a little trick where you like attach whatever the new thing is you're trying to do to something you already do. So I will often tell patients this foam cleanser, I want you to clean your eyelids with it every day. In fact, to make sure you don't forget, I want you to put it next to your toothpaste or your toothbrush. And every time you brush your teeth, wash your lids. Or maybe like with a guy who's showering every day, put this in the shower next to your body wash. Every time you take a shower and wash your body, wash your eyelids, or something like that to help the patient remember, because it's so often that patients will go home and forget they have it and just not ever use it. Or like they'll leave it in their car even, or they'll leave it in some other room, or they'll use it up, but then they won't repurchase it. So part of our workflow is like we send out these reminders like, hey, did you wash your eyelids? Hey, how's everything going? Are you having any problems? How are your eyes feeling? And about that 28-day mark, they get a reminder like, hey, you should be about getting close to the end. It's time to order more. And so we're helping doctors get better compliance with their patients. So you end up ultimately with better patient outcomes, but also it's a little bit of passive income for the optometrist as well. Optometrists, we're so worried about profitability because we are such slaves to insurance plans in so many practices. If you are a doctor that's taking a vision care plan, you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm only getting $40 for this exam, or I'm only getting like $55 for this exam or whatever. If you can increase the profitability per patient by them repurchasing foam cleanser drops and whatever through you on a recurring basis throughout the year, you can increase that profitability tenfold on that patient. And it may not seem like a lot per patient, but the cumulative effect is actually quite substantial.
Sure, for sure. And this is something that would be like, so easy. I mean, it's a short conversation, much probably like the conversation you just had with us, right? About positioning it the same way as you would brushing your teeth, and then you're off and running. So yeah, it's a great opportunity, I think, for a lot of practices to easily add in, like, I'm the numbers guy. Definitely going to go to like the margins and things. We don't have to get into that here, but like, if you get them to repeat that and get them on, and with the help that you're giving to get them, on this, monthly rhythm of reminding them, teaching them the atomic habit stacking tool, and then reminding them to reorder. It kind of, it takes a lot of, it's not very much pressure at all on the office staff to get this done and have a
It's really
benefit for the
not.
patient. I
So
mean,
we do
it's,
have, I've created some training videos for offices. It's really interesting because I'm like the beta test site for everything, right? Like I
uh-huh.
am on the ground, I'm in clinic 5 days a week. So I'm seeing what's working, I'm tweaking things constantly. And I'm here to help provide support for a lot of our offices through these training videos that kind of teach them key ways to get patients to buy that first box of product in office, ways to get them to scan the QR code so that they get put into the workflow. And some of the tips I would give is when you're talking to a patient, we have definitely as doctors, we have this tendency to over explain and talk too fast and try to get into the science too much. And so I give some very short, like tips on how to make that conversation short so that it A, doesn't take a whole lot of time, and B, doesn't get muddled in the patient's brain so that they can take the important stuff, understand it, and take action. And we always have this call to action at the end. So I always say, don't say too much. Just, your point A, B, C, this is what we're going to do about it. And the staff is going to teach you how to use these products. And then part two, when we want to get that patient to scan the QR code, if you leave it up to the staff, let's dial that back a little bit. I always hand the product to the patient in the exam room. If you recommend it, but have the staff hand it to them up at the front desk, the purchase rate in many of our offices is about 1 out of 9. If the doctor hands the product to the patient in the exam room, the purchase rate goes up to about 9 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
So just that one twist, right?
Yeah.
Huge difference. Okay, so then when I want to get the patient to scan the QR code so that they get into the workflow, if I leave that up to the front desk, they will not scan it.
Okay.
We almost 0%. So we have a different tactic that we've been playing with, and our scan rate is almost 100% now. And it's so simple. All I have to do is have the QR code in the exam room on like a little card. I grab a little card, I point to the QR code, and I say, I need you to scan this. This is going to help me take better care of your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, done. Hard stop. Don't talk about subscriptions. Don't talk about workflows. Just tell them to scan it. They're going to do it because they trust you. They've hired you as their eye doctor. They're loyal to you. And yeah, almost 100% of my patients scan it now. So that's awesome because if I want them in the workflow where I can track their compliance and influence their repurchase rate, I need them to scan the code to get them into the workflow. So I work with the offices on things like that to help them refine what they're doing to make them more successful.
That's awesome. Okay. Very good. I know we're like coming close on our time and I want to be respectful of yours. So in kind of wrapping this up, always end with the same question or similar, which this could be something that you've already said and just would like to repeat or even elaborate a little bit on. But otherwise, sometimes a whole new thing comes up. And it's simply this. What is a piece of advice, your best piece of advice you'd give to others who are on their journey in independent optometry and whatever else however else they're looking to, span out in the field as you have?
I would like to just give people advice to do what they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just jump on the next cool thing. So my passions lie in myopia management and dry eye therapy. But if that's not your passion, if you hate that stuff, if you want to offer it, maybe hire somebody else to do it for you. Because if you're not passionate about it, it's going to feel like work. But if you are passionate about it, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to do it well. Your patients will feel that and you'll be very successful. And I think that helps avoid burnout. That's super important. We need a good work-life balance. We need to be happy with what we're doing. So find your passion, whether it's dry eye or myopia management, I don't care, but find your passion and it will feel good.
Great. Yeah, this all sounds really great. If optometrists are out there right now and want more information and how to put this into their own office, where do they get that?
Well, you can go to our website at peeqpro.com. That's PEEQPRO.com. Or you can email us at info@getpeeq.com.
Cheryl, thank you so much for all your time today and your sharing your expertise. I really appreciate it. And hopefully our paths will cross again soon sometime.
I appreciate you having me, Eric. Thank you.
You bet.